So this week we read Dialogues Concerning Natural Religion. David Hume actually writes this book in a very unique way, as you see a dialogue of three separate points of view, three ideas, three different mindsets, basically an argument amongst friends, as you see them argue with each other and then kind of go back and forth. Almost Philo, you almost see it as a playful banner. And so they argue with each other, and as they're arguing, they're coming up with these points and kind of back and forth. Even so much so is that Philo actually argues, I think, against things that he doesn't necessarily agree with or he actually believes, but he's arguing for the sake of arguing. And so it seems like a really interesting dialogue. David Hume here is actually arguing that God can't be proved to exist solely based off logic or the natural order of nature. And this can be a difficult read, especially for Christians, because it's not objective towards one particular religion, one particular God. And so we'd want to put words in there from the Bible, or we want to argue from the Bible's point of view. And these guys aren't doing that. They're actually arguing the true idea of a natural designer, based off what you see, what you've observed, what we know, what we don't know, and whether or not we can, without a doubt, prove that there is a God or a natural designer. And so you see Philo, he makes some great points. As much as I disagree with him, I'd love to say that he's crazy. But he actually made some great points. And as far as arguing goes, he ought to get an award for what he does, what he says. I mean, he literally is able to take anything that Cleanthes throws out there and disprove it at some way, some point. Not necessarily always just completely shutting it down, but he does. Look, as a skeptic, you're always going to win, because you never have to prove anything true. It's not your job. Your job is simply just to deny, deny, deny. And so you see him do that with reason. You see him do that with ideas that go well beyond what some of our minds can even comprehend. And so he uses philosophy, he uses, matter of fact, uses Cleanthes' own words against him in many cases, and his own beliefs. And so I thought it was really unique when Philo argued the idea of multiple gods. And I thought, man, you got him there. That's a very tough place. From a Christian standpoint, I can go into the Bible and show you and talk to him and reason, but we're not doing that. Again, it goes back to a grand designer or a grand creator, or the idea or a mind or a natural order is just that things are just happening the way that they're supposed to happen. And so you see Philo argue those points against Cleanthes. I think Cleanthes does make some great points. That he argues that God does exist because you see the way things work. The fact that it's not simply just about regeneration. And I would argue even further with Cleanthes here, as he talked about the fact that the fact that our bodies work the way they do, that there is a natural order to things, and Philo actually tried to say, well, it's all about regeneration, it's all about vegetation, all these things. It's a regenerative type state. But I would disagree. I mean, you look at even in a sin-filled world today in homosexuality. So you see the nature or natural order of man or women in that particular instance is not just regeneration. So you actually see sin penetrating into the natural order of things. And again, they wouldn't talk about sin a whole lot, didn't talk about, because it's not a Christian argument, it's about deity and whether we can see it or not. But it's hard to not see those, it's hard to see that without knowing, having an idea of what sin's done to this world, and the fact that we have a creator and what he created the world for. And then you look at Demea, and I actually side with Demea a lot. I think that we can't put God in a man-sized box and expect him to stay there. We can't say, well, God thinks this way or he does that because we think those things. Our mind is so limited when it comes to the capability of understanding and knowing God. And we just barely scratch the surface. And so to say that, oh, well, God, things happen this way, the order's this, and that's because God set it up because our mind's like his, it's just not possible. God's ways are better than ours, is bigger than ours. He thinks better than we do. And to try to say that something somewhere else got to match the way it does here, I think Philo distorts a lot of Cleanthony's ideas. I think Cleanthony's actually trying to say that it doesn't have to be the same thing in every situation. And so ultimately, I don't really side with any of them. I was actually surprised to see Hume side with Cleanthony's at the very end instead of Philo. I know that he agrees a lot with Philo, but I also believe that Hume is not an atheist. He's an agnostic, and so he wants to believe in some kind of deity and know that there is some kind of creator out there. He just wants to show that we can't necessarily point our finger on it and say it's that God. Although I would argue as a Christian that we can. So here's my questions. Would it have been easier for Cleanthes to argue if he was arguing from the standpoint of the Christian God alone? So he was able to use the Bible, the Christian God, and those things. Would it be easier for him to do that? Also, do you see danger in the fact that they use God as a liberal word instead of defining Jehovah as we would know him, or Elohim? And so how important it is for us to define who God is whenever we talk to someone or we're arguing about our Creator. And I think it's important for us to look at that and not just say, well, God. You know, we have a world that says, you know, on our dollar bill, in God we trust. But what God are we talking about? And so we have to be careful with that. So do you think that there's a danger there of them just generically talking about a deity and not the Christian God?